Adequate notice of this meeting of the Board of Elections to discuss an emergent and important matter, my glasses on, that has arisen and a delay of the meeting for the purpose of providing adequate notice would likely result in substantial harm to the public interest. For those attending the meeting today, please be aware that all board meetings are recorded via audio. Roll call?
Commissioner Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Brien?
Present.
Commissioner Castro?
Here.
Commissioner Mosley?
Here.
Commissioner Jallo?
Here.
Here. Old business none, new business redistricting. Ready?
Yeah, so, make it,
Have we heard, Tom, since you sent the email, have we heard anything from anybody in Piscataway or Old Bridge?
Old Bridge, we're still having conversations with, and I can kind of relay the conversation. I think we resolved a lot of what we had on that, just conversation with the engineer on Monday. Piscataway said, quite frankly, they might need an extra day just to go over. Nick, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear us?
Yeah. If you guys are able to hear my laptop, I'm back. Yeah, Nick, if you want to go on the screen, you're on the you're on a screen behind me. I can kind of maybe try and trim up my.
Can you hear everybody?
Yeah, I
hear?
Well, he has to speak. He's got to speak first, I don't know.
I can hear you. Yeah. So and again, I have you on. If you want to blow it up, I have you on a screen in just basically a small classroom. The audio is a little difficult, but they're able to see your screen. So if you kind of if you want to go over the what's that?
Want to come sit over
Look
here?
at the screen. Yeah.
The maps
here, maps
I know, okay, well, it's a question what we're doing here.
Yeah, so if you can maybe, you'll have to zoom in on those ones. If I could ask you to go through I guess the three easiest towns, which would be South Amboy, Woodbridge, and Monroe.
Yep. Yes, so South Amboy, we did the rewarding. We took full District 1 from Ward 3 and put it into Ward 1. And then there's a little block right here that we took from Ward 2 and brought it into Ward 1. So we needed to adjust the district boundary lines per the ward boundary lines that were adopted under Title 40. So here's the current map, and you got your voting district number and then the registered voter totals for the street list that was provided, and that's how they break down throughout each district. Now you'll see some say total. That just shows where a break is. So you got 53 registered voters in this little block, 770 registered voters in the remainder of District 3, and then
We loaded up, it's the top
23
map, South Amboy, those two, we just,
numbers. So, and then let me pull up scenario 1, South Amboy. So what we did,
I don't think it's gonna be an issue, we're not sure.
we took that, what used to be Ward 3, District 1, and absorbed it into District 2 of Ward 1. And then we had different districts in Ward 3, so in order to stay kind of consistent within all three districts, we split District 2 right along
This is the new district lines.
railroad, which is the New Jersey coastline, and that way it was actually almost a pretty even spread, and now we have three districts in all three wards. And Tom, I just have an reminder the board that this is under Title 19 redistricting statutes. So under Title 40, we dealt with population and that less than 10% deviation between any two wards in a municipality. Now that we do any impacted election districts by virtue of the rewarding, that falls
falls under the Title 19 statutes, which is based on registered voters and the last two consecutive general elections for votes cast. However, the other statutory requirements remain the same: compact and contiguous natural man-made features to divide those boundaries based on the voter list. So, like Nick had indicated, the total number underneath the district number are those registered voters. And I only pointed it out because if you go back, Nick, to Ward 1 and District 2, that's 759, which was left over. That was the original, I want to say, Ward 1 District 2 voter total, which it was a typo, we left it on the map. However, that just shows you between removed original district that was pulled into Ward 1 and the original 759 gives you that 1,040 registered voters for District 2 in Ward 1.
Yep. Yeah, so that's how South Amboy, that's the alternate scenario of South Amboy. And do any of the commissioners have any questions?
Can we vote per town, or can we take 3 towns at once?
Well, I would defer to you guys right here.
The clerk doesn't have any issues, and the numbers seem to be comparably fine, so I have no
No
problems.
issues for the clerk, no?
No. I mean, I repeated before, my issue was somebody on the ground,
Oh, sure. It's fine, I'll let you know if you need to add in.
somebody on the ground in the towns wanted to look, I wanted them to look at it, so we know, all we see are lines on a map. We want somebody on the ground to see if there's anything that they know on the ground. It's like they're splitting a development, a housing development that they don't have to, or there's a major divided highway that's splitting a district that they don't have to, that sort of thing.
Wouldn't they have reported that to the committee that sat and actually worked on?
No,
They would not have
no,
reported that.
they would draft it, the
Whatever.
Remington and Vernon
But
was
now-
draft the
now you're
lines
going
based on the
numbers.
population and the population
The numbers.
numbers. That's why I just checked. If South Amboy, from my perspective, South Amboy, Woodbridge, and Monroe clerks don't have any issue, and I'm assuming none of the party people on either side had any questions. Those three, I would just say we just approve, because there's no reason not to. Okay. Shall I just move that?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
fine.
I move that we adopt the redistricting in South Amboy, Woodbridge, and Monroe.
Second.
Roll call?
Chairman Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner Franklin? Yes. Commissioner Cap?
Yes,
Commissioner Muscle?
What did we vote on the last time, if not the adoption?
wards.
This is
This
redistricting.
is just the individual election districts, it doesn't
The
change
actual
where they are.
wards. Terminology would have said wards there and redistricting here.
Number
So my vote is yes.
Commissioner
that
Jello?
would be something.
Yes.
You would approve the maps if you want.
Yes.
To make it how you want it.
Okay, so that's something that they want to.
Yeah,
There's
so,
there's one issue on Monroe.
Kevin, the commissioners approved the scenarios for redistricting, but if you could go to the Monroe, because that would probably be the piece that they would have to just say number-wise how they want the districts to look.
Alright, so I'm gonna pull out a list of Monroe
I can get it.
as it
Yeah.
stands this moment today. The
You want the
current
all
districts.
Can you turn the sound up? Your sound up?
Is that Kevin? We have to change the number, we gotta just.
So starting with Ward 1, there was, I'm trying,
Okay, Ward 2,
if
Ward
there were
1.
any duplicate districts in Ward 1.
I see Ward 1, what's your next comment?
So I'm just looking to see what districts were duplicated in Monroe because there was,
You're just talking about the numbering?
And District 6 was split between Ward 2 and Ward 3. So we needed to adjust that district to figure out how to conform that. So in alternate scenario 1, we absorbed that piece of District 6 into District 16 here. And then anywhere, in Ward 3, there were duplicate districts 1 and 2 that were brought in from, I believe, Ward 1, Ward 1, due to the rewarding process. So what we did was just follow suit as far as whatever the next district number, available district number was, that's what we used.
Is the only question here what number you're calling the district, and the clerk, the municipal clerk was already happy with it?
Yes,
That's the thing, so it's just a question what number it is?
yes, sir.
I think if we're creating a new district, we just use a new number.
Oh, we're not
Not
creating.
creating a new district, though.
You're not creating a new district,
Okay.
you're just moving, again, you move some districts
No,
around and stuff like that.
No, I mean, we're creating a new, it's in a different ward, so it has to have a different number. So we have to have a new district number in the other ward.
So, but again, if you want to defer to the clerk on the numbering,
Well, my impression would be, I would like to keep to the extent we have it, to keep the district numbers that were there before we rewarded the same to the extent it exists, but to the extent that we moved other districts into the board, then we give them the next numbers that are available. Because I don't want to start saying if someone was in Ward 1, District 1, and, or Ward 1, District 5, and the district lines are exactly the same, now we call them a different number.
not
But
that we
even
would
if
be
you did,
changing
you'd
the
let them know, I
entire.
mean, it's
I
a
know, but
decision
there's no-
made for
but
the
there's no need
correct
to-
value of voting.
Right, there's no need to confuse
Commissioner
them.
Katz, what we did was, in this case, original district, we're up here. So, Ward 3, districts 1 and 2, we kept the existing ward and district number to not impact existing voters and where they're used to going as far as what their district was called, ward and district. So if you notice by the rewarding, we pulled from the adjacent ward, I want to say it was 1, their 1 and 2 came into 3, which already had a 1 and 2. And also, if you look south, we also had an 8, which is what we were bringing over from the 1. So in essence, we brought old 1, 8 and 12, and 8 existing part of 8 over into new Ward 3. So we left what was already in Ward 3 intact, and those new districts that came into the new ward, we renumbered at the next higher number going forward. So they were already being impacted, so we changed those to a new number, a unique number, but we left what was already in that existing ward alone.
So what you're telling me is, I think it's what I just said, if I understand it right. You moved something from Ward 3 to Ward 1, and those districts are just being numbered in Ward 1 to the next numbers that are available,
Sequential number.
right?
Yes, sir. That is correct. Yes, sir.
That's fine.
That's fine, it's nothing, it's just, I prefer not to have voters confused that they're living in the same district, changing the numbers in the same ward if we don't need to. It's a question of less confusion, that's fine.
So if the commissioners are fine with the clerk kind of setting what those changes district.
I don't
numbers are.
care whether it's Ward 1, District 16, or 1, District 4.5. I mean,
I wouldn't like for it.
I know.
I know, don't,
Okay.
I'm just trying to get a levity for myself.
No, that's okay. I
Get
just-
frustrated.
Okay.
So we need to vote on that.
So if that's it, then.
No, that's, we did that already.
For the
They
three
were
towns
happy
you guys
with
just
it.
approved.
They were happy with
Woodbridge
it
is
on the
clean,
ground, that's
South
all.
Amboy is clean.
Didn't tell us that we
Just
have an
one
issue.
road that just
That's
needed-
why you have
So
That's
we
what
should
I-
make sure, if you want to amend our motion is to vote on alternate scenario
I
1.
didn't ask for it, they just.
Well, there's only one scenario for
Not the
each.
number.
Okay, fine, okay, so we're fine.
That's not the number, they just added that.
Everybody okay?
We did this.
Yeah.
Yes, so all 3 are done, okay.
Okay. All right, Kevin, thank you
very much.
That's it.
Yep, that's it.
And what about Piscataway and Old Bridge?
All right, Tom.
I can, well, do you want, oh, I'm sorry. Well, hold on 1 second. Hey, Kevin, hold on 1 second.
Well, we need to call them back if we have to look at it. Is somebody going to explain what was done, or Piscataway and Old Bridge, we haven't heard anything from anybody.
No, and Old Bridge's questions were related to those congressional
So
kind of created lines.
we could, if you want to, Kevin may want to, is Kevin on the line still?
Yeah, Kevin, do you want to go over Old Bridge and those congressional created kind of like micro districts? Hey, Dick, Kevin, are you still on?
Yes, we
Yeah,
are.
could you guys pull up the Old Bridge scenario one and go over those congressional micro districts and kind of explain it to the commissioners? We're not, they won't be voting on it, but at least maybe we can start the explanation.
Okay, Old Bridge.
This is when you have to pay attention.
Then I have to see it. Before you start talking, let's at least see it. I want to pay attention, but I have to see it.
I know,
We
I
have to see it.
understand.
If it-
I don't know what
Why
to
are we
do.
all dressed in black? I don't know.
You're black and white, and I'm black and white.
Well, there's someone.
Yeah, if you guys want to go ahead and start explaining Old Bridge.
Yeah, so this is the current map of Old Bridge and how this shows, this yellow line shows how the congressional district splits the town in half, or not in half, but right down the middle. Between C12 and C6. And same formula as the voters, district numbers, and the voter totals. Now, we tried to, anywhere that there was a split, we tried to show who's on each side of that split within that district. So you got District 8 of Ward 4 is split, and then you have 944 registered voters in this section and 16 registered voters along 687 there. And,
Is that a ward line? In other words, is Jake,
So what you're looking at is.
That's a congressional.
no, this dotted line is the congressional line.
Iconically call it.
And this is a ward line.
Yes.
Yellow brick
Which
line.
means we created an election
Where
district with
the
16
congressional
votes.
12 and 6 split Old Bridge, it meanders through, and that's where you're gonna see your impact of these split districts based on that yellow line. Now, if we go back to, I think it's new Ward 4, District 8, you'll notice along Jake Brown Road there, that is a ward boundary, which is
Yeah, it's
still
gotta be this.
the existing election district 8 ward boundary.
What you have listed as 8B? What you have listed as 8B?
Well, yeah, if you want to jump to that map, when we have.
That's the map we have in front of us.
To explain to the board, we went ahead and we have 3 districts along the yellow line between C12 and C6 that are split by that congressional line. And we designated, so in other words, Ward 4 District 8 is still Ward 4 District 8 as far as wards and election district boundaries are concerned. However, you have the northern part of 8, which has 16 registered voters in C6, and the southern part of District 8 in Ward 4 in C12. So there's a provision in the statutes that when you have an artificial split by a congressional line, such as you see here in Old Bridge, the district is still all 8, which has your original 900 and
960.
whatever.
944 plus 16.
Yeah, right. However, 8B is in C6 and 8A is in C12. Now, the orange line, we cannot move. That was adopted, it was
and I can't cross over from Ward 4 with 8 and go into 6 and vice versa. However, there is a provision allowed to do an A and a B designation, crossing a congressional or in Newark, New Jersey City's case, a legislative line, because they're the only two towns split by legislative districts, to allow you to keep 8 intact, however, B is C6 and A is C12. You have that also up north of Woolbridge in 1, which in this case, you see the yellow line. We actually have no voters in 1B. However, there is probably population there, but remember, Title 19, we're dealing with voters. And then in 1A, you have 702. And then the other impacted district is 10. So in Ward 2, District 10, I apologize, Ward 1, District 10, you have 55 registered voters in B, and you have 397 in A. So I want to point out to the board, it's still District 10 in Ward 1, however, part of it's in 6 and part of it's in 12. So that is where you have those 3 districts that are split into 6 different sub-districts, for lack of a better word, and the number of registered voters in each piece of it. So that, I believe you would still have to identify, okay, in Ward 1, 10B is C6, and 10A is C12. I guess they're still unique districts, broken down by a letter, but it's still all one District 10, just like it's all one District 8 or all one District 1 up north. So it's only in the areas where the congressional line has split through Woolbridge that you have this issue where they're not coincident with either a ward line, which I cannot move and I cannot cross, versus a yellow congressional line, which I can cross, but identify which half is in which congressional district, as designated by an A and a B. And you can only use an A or a B for the statutes.
Tom?
Commissioner
Yeah,
Katz would like to ask.
We have these micro things. The
Yes.
issue is that we're talking about low numbers here. And it's not, this is not your, this is going to be a legal question to talk to the Attorney General. With the numbers, I mean, we have 16 and 55, et cetera. 16 and 55, at least as to those. The question is whether we can ask the Attorney General to go to court to allow us to move the ward lines.
They have gone to court. No, they have gone to court.
Over this?
Oh, there's throughout the state. The whole state has gone to court. Okay, on all of these type of micro districts, and the court upheld them. Am I correct? Kevin?
Yes, the congressional redistricting was contested in court, and then this line was upheld.
That's not the issue. That's not the question, and that's not the issue. The issue is whether we can ask the AG to allow a modification of the ward lines when we're talking about 16 people and 55 people, move the ward lines so those 16 and 55 can be in the adjacent ward, which should not upset the plus or minus percentage for the wards, and we won't have those, at least in those two, micro districts. That would be a request.
So Commissioner Katz, if I can rephrase, and I follow what you're saying. So in other words, ask permission from the AG's office to say, let's take the boundary that runs along Jake Brown Road, which divides, I'm going to say 4 and 3, and then have it coincident with the new congressional line that is between C12 and C6, and then move those 16 voters and whatever that population is in 8B into Ward 3, where it is
The
now.
16 vote, the 8B and 10B, which is 55. So we're talking about 55, 60, we're talking about 70 voters from one ward to another, so we eliminate the two of the micro districts. I don't know where the third one is again.
Well, I just want to remind the commissioner to remember, rewarding was based on population.
I understand.
But we would have to look at the population total. But to your point, sir, yes, I believe there is precedent that, and I want to say Essex County went back and did the very thing you're suggesting to make those ward lines coincident with the new congressional line. because we're on the heels of each other doing this at the same time. So I believe there is precedent, but I would recommend the board go back to the AG's office to get that clarification. But I actually agree with that, but the timing of it is what it is, but
We have no
if
ward.
that's not the case, you would have these micro districts.
In Old Bridge, we don't have another ward races for another 4 years. So there is time here, even if we don't do it, it doesn't have to be done for this primary in terms of that, because you're just, the only 8A and 8B is.
I will tell you, Commissioner Katz, I did call Bob Giles in the division's office early on in this process, and their recommendation was, whenever possible, to make a cleaner, less confusing map. If you can make ward lines based on population from Title 40, coincident with those congressional boundaries, they would recommend that we do so to avoid this very scenario.
Right, so we have to get the AG, if it has to be a court, if it has to be a court order, we have to ask the AG to go in and do that, so we can do that, because I mean, it's, it should not, I don't know what the total ward numbers are, but I can't believe that, it would come out of balance if we move what is 16 and 55, which is not going to be coincident with the population part of it total, but it should be fairly close.
Hey, Tom, what we can do is we can investigate the population totals for those 3 sub-districts in question and get that to the board members through you, Tom, if that would help, to see if there is going to be a deviation beyond that 10% we're allowed. And keep in mind, so if you notice, Commissioner Katz and the board members, 1B has 0 registered voters. There's probably population there, though. I do know that's an industrial park area, so it's probably not going to be a great number. But just because you see a 0 registered voters does not mean there's no population.
I understand that, but it's likely to be comparatively close. And moving what is 0 registered voters is probably not a population that was going to unbalance a ward if we move it to the ward. We eliminate the micro district.
Yeah, I think a cleaner map, less confusing map, would warrant investigating this. And like I said, Commissioner Katz, I believe there's precedent. In fact, I'm confident there's precedent in Essex County that has been done. But I do know the AG's office needs to be involved.
Okay. So people understand what I'm talking about? No?
Well, here's a problem, not that it's just a situation. If we do not adopt.
There's an alternate, right, okay, so I'm sorry, shut up.
No,
Go ahead.
if we don't adopt this map by Thursday, and let's say the Attorney General agrees to take it on our appeal, then the maps revert back to what they were.
Yeah.
Okay, which is
more splits all over the place.
which is more splits all over the place.
No, I understand that.
Right. So I don't think we're gonna get an answer.
Yeah.
Today's Tuesday. We're not gonna certainly get an answer by Thursday.
I think we adopt the Old Bridge map this way, but for now, and we request the Attorney General to go to court to allow us to modify the ward lines, which is the only issue here in Old Bridge, and it's not a timing issue because the next ward election is in 4 years. So if they can go to court and say we can modify those ward lines, we do that, eliminate the micro districts.
Wouldn't you rather just have an explanation from the commission as to whether this was discussed at all before you go to court?
Which commission?
Whoever the group was that put the maps together.
No, all the congressional
Because
district
my
maps.
understanding is that the discussions were really clear about the process that was coming in, particularly in Oak Ridge. So I'm just surprised that this is coming up now and that no one had
No, it had to
questioned
come,
this.
it had to come up now.
No, I
The
mean,
congressional
tonight.
district, we saw the proposed districts, we didn't, there was nothing that we,
I'm not saying from us, I'm saying from the persons who put together the lines, etc. How long has this been completed?
The
their decision as to
The
all.
maps were done prior to you guys beginning your work on the report.
Correct.
Yes.
So there's been quite a bit of time for persons to review this and see if there are any concerns.
Weren't there concerns in Old Bridge? You said that there was,
Their concerns were looking at that in terms of the micro, those districts and how, what polling locations they would go to. Was the essence of their concerns.
And that was answered.
It would be,
Yes.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
answer, but they were kind of looking for assurances from the board in terms of a reply from the board, giving their approval to the district line maps.
Assurances from the
Well,
board. as to-
and again, they were looking at.
Oh, yeah, well, part of the
55
things
and
apparently
16.
will be voting in other polling locations. I can't tell how many people would be moved on that part. I mean, just so everybody knows, what Kevin was talking about in there in terms of the law, if a individual polling district has two congressional districts or two wards, you can have a and B or whatever it is, and they go into that polling place and they're voting in the same election district in the same polling place, but they're going to be voting for different people. So you're going to have people in an individual election district, some of which are going to vote for a congressman, for example, in Congressional District 6, and some in Congressman or 12, or some in Ward 1 and some in Ward 2, which is even more confusing in
And
terms
if
of
I
that.
may have Commissioner Katz, if I may speak, remember, in this case, Ward 3, Ward 1, 10 and 10A and 10B, it's still Ward 1, Election District 10, which is the 397 plus the 55 registered voters. That didn't go away. What did change, though, is the fact that it's split between two congressional districts.
I understand.
And identified. You could almost call it Ward 1, 10C6 and Ward 1, 10C12. That's where possible confusion, where it has to be clearly marked and designated on election day, which part of 10 those voters would reside in and be voting in. But it's still all 10, which is why the statute gives you the provision of that AB designation. I know when I contacted the division on this, they said whenever possible, if possible, to make a cleaner, less confusing map, if maybe the ward lines coincident with the congressional lines, and if time allowed, or the population allowed, they recommended you do that, but you did not have to do that. So I just want to remind the board, it's still 10, Ward 1 District 10, just you have 55 voters in C12, and you have
397
in 12 and 6, and you have 397 in 6, and that exists in 8 as well as in the one up above.
Yeah, I thought that was my understanding of what I said, but the ward lines are not an issue. The ward lines in Old Bridge will not be an issue for 4 years, because the next ward election, unless there's another vacancy or something, there's another election, is in 4 years from now, because we just had it. So, and of course, we're finishing up a revote under the old lines in 4 today. But I think, in my opinion, I think that we should ask the Attorney General to go in and request to get a court order to allow us to modify the ward lines in those 3 locations so they can be coexistent with the congressional districts, so we don't have any individual election districts where people are voting for parts of people are voting for 2 different congressmen or otherwise.
it makes sense.
And to make it less confusing, Matt, and
Yes.
I agree with that. And just another reminder,
She was a voting member.
Redistricting.
we definitely need
They haven't signed off on
an
redistricting.
AG's
Yeah.
approval to proceed with rewording. However, redistricting can happen at any time, and you're not ending in a 1 or a 0. So you can revisit districts even after that happens anyway. But the ward lines, as you said, Commissioner Katz, you would need, a hold on that.
Yeah, well, for for this year, apparently, we have to adopt district lines by Thursday,
Right.
right?
To
So-
be in place for June,
So,
correct?
just correct me if this scenario makes sense based on what we're told here. One, we adopt the district lines as you proposed now. So we have mini districts, but so there'll be some that, unfortunately for this primary and this general, people will be voting, or this general election, not the primary, no, this primary too. This primary and this general election, people in 3 individual election districts, some of them will be voting in different congressional districts, so that'll be A, B, et cetera.
Remember, you don't have any.
I think we have 0 voters, okay. But there'll be 2. And then, but in the meantime, we go into court, we request the Attorney General to go into court to allow us to move the ward lines coexistent with the congressional lines to eliminate the mini districts and put the people in put everybody in one congressional district or another, and in one ward or another. They're already in one ward or another. Did I state it right, and does that make sense to you?
It does.
If you don't split it, I will not support that. I will support voting for this, but not
what
that
you
you
can
could,
do
if your
statutorily
motion
anyway, so.
means I
yes,
have to go to the
and I-
Attorney
like I said
General, I will
before,
not
believe
support
there's
that, I
precedent
wouldn't vote
for
to see that.
And I would
And then you
have
can
Essex
add
County
your
goes
day,
along,
you don't have to
so
separate.
that
I
makes
don't,
sense.
I don't care, it's just a question, I'm trying to
Okay.
avoid
One
voter
person-
Can
confusion.
somebody just
Hold it, hold it.
listen to
I'm
Kevin
sorry.
right now?
Well, he presented it, and I wanted to respond when he made his comment. I didn't hear Kevin
If I,
coming up.
if I may, Don, I don't think, just so, I'm not saying we shouldn't vote, all I'm saying is that Old Bridge is asking for us to give still a little bit
Okay.
more input. I think we're gonna have to have that by we told them we have to have it by Thursday. So I think this was more informational to discuss for us instead of
Okay.
making a motion on the table, because we'd like to hear, to be fair to Old Bridge, any other input they may have. And the only other thing that I would suggest is, if we're gonna stick with that map, we're very close to it, whatever we're doing, is I think we as a group did not like the A and B as far as lettering is concerned. So if we're gonna stick with this and go, and if we're gonna vote to go to the Attorney General, that's fine, but I'd rather 8A and 8B become 8 as a number, and whatever the next sequential number is, I think the voters are gonna get confused by an A and a B.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're gonna have, but that'll be a separate and distinct election district, which is a machine, typically, it would
Which we
probably
would
be
have
a
to-
machine
which-
and poll clerks for 16
Yep.
people and 55 people.
We are gonna have to serve it, we will have to, as election board, we will have to service those micro districts. And we'd have to tell Old Bridge that we're gonna service those micro districts. But I mean, I don't see any other way out of this at the moment.
Yes, I
I don't see any other way out at the moment.
We have to adopt something, we have to adopt districts by Thursday.
Right.
So, I'm not sure I'm happy to wait. We were looking, so I was looking for the input for the people on the ground.
Right.
Which is the Oak Ridge people for Oak Ridge, and see what they say. But I'm not sure that there's anything that they can say.
I don't think there's much more either, but they were very,
Oh, it's fine, I'm happy.
they were very interested of making
So-
comments.
So, fine, so do we, for that, I guess at that point, if they got till Thursday, then we're gonna have to have like
Discuss it with, yeah, I think they should know
an
your.
email
the
vote or
idea.
something on that at that point.
Right,
So
I think,
what's the choice?
well, they had a discussion with Remington and Vernick. They discussed everything, the Old Bridge
Old
people.
Bridge people.
And they discussed everything, and they discussed what this situation was about the micro districts. They were looking a little input from us, because I got on that call a little bit, and I said, I believe I was speaking for everybody, that we kind of agreed that the A and B scenario wasn't to, if preferable, was not to our liking. We'd rather have a number sequentially. Okay, A and B seems to be a little confusing, but it's only for 2 districts as far as that's concerned.
2 districts.
Well,
Yeah, question? Hold
it's
a
for a
minute.
third, but right now.
But the
there's
third is
no
nobody in there, right, but.
One minute.
but someone registers there, then we have to, we'd have one voter there, and we have an
Could-
election district.
Well, but I think our gut as professionals are saying is that if we, and what Kevin is saying as a professional, if we do appeal, there's precedent to get this done, but we're under a time constraint.
Yeah,
So,
Commissioner Moskowitz would like to say something.
My question is, you implied there was a call that everybody agreed on. What call and with whom?
there was not a call.
You
I said Remington Vernick was on a call with Aldrich.
they were
You
talking to
were on
them
Yes.
about
Not
that.
you.
I got on, I wanted to
So it
hear,
was you, them, and the Old Bridge persons.
and
So you
Administrator-
were on, was the president, you on the call?
I invited Commissioner Katz.
Yeah.
You were on the call?
I
No.
was not,
No.
but it wasn't a decision part of it, I think they were trying to figure out what was going on.
It was
It was
informational.
informational, I didn't, you know,
Okay, then
and I needed to know the information from here, because I hadn't seen any of this stuff. I mean, this thing that we got emailed, I didn't know.
it's very important for you to have the
Yes.
information. I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
My disagreement with you is not because I think
Okay.
that there's any issue in terms of information, but then I had curiosity about the call because I didn't even know there was a call.
Well, it was-
And I think, you know, if we come in now and there's this whole thing about letters and numbers, and not all of us are familiar with that issue as a problem, I could have even looked into it before I walked into the meeting to find out if there was a problem, if it's called A or called B or called a bigger letter or number, do you understand? So,
Okay.
I still vote
Here.
with the MAC because I think that we need to.
Well, we're
get
not
that
ready to
approved.
vote, we're preparing, what we,
We have to vote.
And can you
what
vote?
Dan suggests that we wait till Thursday to give Old Bridge the additional time to look at it.
I have to agree.
And on a practical basis, I don't think they can do anything. They can look at it and they can chew on it, but I don't think they can do anything because it's different than this part. So if they agree, or whatever we come back to that, then we have to adopt a map, probably this map, on Thursday, which I'm assuming we'll have to do by email
Or Zoom.
or Zoom.
Or you can have
Don, what
emergency
is the
meeting, so
law,
they-
how does the law phrase the acceptance of the map, and the closer we get to an election, some real issues have come up, and we need to address that in order to set up the
An
vote,
emergence, an
to
emergency.
set up the
But
correct
we
polling
don't
places. That's why I'm asking, if the structures are okay, but the labeling is a little off, and we keep the map, do we have time to change it to make the voting areas most appropriate for the citizens? Because that seems to
I
be the
think we're
concern.
gonna be stuck, I think we're gonna be stuck for the lettering for this congressional election, the primary and the general. Because we can't move the congressional districts, and unless we want to put out another machine and another 4 poll clerks in at least 2 of the other districts for the
16.
primary and general for this election, we're probably better off with A and B for now, and then correct, and then maybe after the election, or any time, we ask the AG to go in and allow us to modify the board lines to make them coexistent, so that stuff goes away after this election cycle. This cycle being the 2022 primary and general,
Right.
right? That's,
And what's the chance of that happening?
well, it's not gonna happen before,
No,
it's
I
not gonna
know,
happen by
but even
Thursday.
later?
Well, Kevin says there's precedent in terms of doing that, and it makes sense, because if moving the number of voters and population in these little micro districts are unlikely to unbalance the populations between the wards. Now, I don't know about their polling locations as to whether the voters are going to be somewhat inconvenienced, or it's that same polling location where they would end up being. So I don't know that, and we could also take a look at that before we ask. We probably should take a look at that, saying if we did ask the AG to go into court to allow us to make that coexistent, where would those people be voting? The people that were moving to a different ward, where would they be voting?
Kevin, are you still on the line?
I am, yeah.
I believe you did investigate what Commissioner Katz was asking, correct? There was a question about where these micro districts were voting, and I think you said as long as they're within 1,000 feet of
I know,
polling place.
I-
No, but I think you,
That's
I'm
why
sorry, I think he investigated, that's what I'm saying.
You know, I know it's a question of being able to legally do it and whether it's also a voter convenience issue, and I don't know that.
I think,
Well, to answer to your point, yes, we investigated. I know Nick of my office, Nick Phelan, did send an email to Tom and to Commissioner Frankel from our call yesterday with regard to where those polling places are and their proximity. But I do want to remind the commission that, again, Ward 110, which now unfortunately is split into an A and a B, is still Ward 110, and wherever they're voting now, which I believe is just adjacent, if you notice where the 4 is under the District 7, that is a polling place. I believe that's where they're reporting now. So that is within a couple hundred feet actually of
Okay.
10. Definitely within 10B. So that's where all of 10 is voting at this present time. So unless there is an alternate place and you've done your due diligence, you're well within your purview to keep that polling place for 10A and 10B. And the same would be true for the 8s and the 1s.
Well, we're talking about eliminating the necessity of having 3 micro districts, but which we won't do for this election because there's no time to do that. So here's a suggestion, we'll modify it a little bit again, all right? We wait to see, for Old Bridge, we wait to let the local folks tell us if there's anything they have, and I don't think they can do anything. And then we approve the map, the district lines map that we see here by however means, Zoom, Teams, email, whatever it is. So we have that in place, which will unfortunately give us A's and B's in 3 districts related to congressional votes in the primary and the general. I don't think of those things whether we want to stuff in another machine and another 4 poll clerks and divide those 2 up for this 2 elections, but we can if we want to. But it'll be this 1 primary and 1 general, I would probably leave the A and B, and then after that, assuming we take a look and see where, if we got a court order to allow us to move the ward lines coexistent with the congressional lines, before we ask the court order, we'd see where the people would end up, the people that are being moved in these micro districts, where they would vote and see whether it's still comparably convenient for them, either the same place or not too far in a different polling place, but also comparably convenient. And once we determine if that's the case, then we ask the AG to go in and see if we can get a court order to allow us to move the board lines. Does that make sense? Did anybody either understand me or did everybody lose me?
I understand, but I think, again, if you're leaning to A and B and I'm leaning to numerical sequential, only because if we do not get approval, we're back where we're starting from. So that's why I'm thinking out loud is to.
Is it less confusing for
It seems
for this election?
I think as a number goes versus a letter, this is my opinion. To me, it seems less confusing. For others, it may not be. I don't know.
Well, that's like creating a whole new, three more districts.
Well, we would have to support that.
Yes.
And we'd have to support if we're successful, then
It's only for the 1 year. I
Correct.
understand that.
But if we're not successful, we have to do it.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, our cost to create a district is another machine, 2 more poll books,
Right.
and 4 poll clerks at each election. So it's salaries for 8 poll clerk days every year at 300 or 200, whatever the number
But
is.
we haven't done this though. This is not
No,
our.
I just, if we, which we would not ultimately need if we get the court to allow us to do it.
If.
Until we can, then that's what,
Right.
this would be a cost, this would be a cost that the county taxpayers that we have to bear, and then more administrative in terms of more public clerks, people have to find them, et cetera, that we would have to bear versus using the state, what's in the statute now, which is they go and vote in the same polling place, the same court polling, the same for poll clerks, the same machine, et cetera, but the card that they're gonna get will set the machine so they're voting for either 6 or 12 congressional districts. So I think we can do either way for this election. I think it'd be, if it were me only saying this, I would probably, for this election, keep the A and B, because instead of stuffing more and others, more machines, more poll clerks, et cetera, in the same polling place for the few number of people. And then hopefully it will get a court order, allow us to get rid of this part of it. But I
Get rid of the A and B.
get rid of the A and B and essentially we get rid of the A and B by moving the ward lines to be coexistent, those three places coexistent with the congressional lines, which would eliminate the 3 micro districts.
That makes sense.
My only nervousness is that if we don't get the approval to do that, and then we're back to an A and B, and then we're gonna go back to.
At least we tried.
At that point, we can say, okay, we have A and B, and we don't like to be A and B. Instead of A and B, we'll create 3 separate standalone district numbers, staff it with 4 public clerks, an extra machine, and 2 e-poll books for 16 people, and another one for 55 people. And if somebody actually registered, God forbid, the other thing, for 1 person or 2 people or whatever.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, but we don't have to make that decision, that decision now. We can do it either way. What I'm really talking about is what do we want to do for this year after we adopt it.
And again, I want to remind the board that you can redistrict between now and 2029 at the board's discretion.
Well, we can only, that's very fine, it's redistrict, but it won't, it doesn't make any difference unless we move the ward lines, because we still end up with 3 micro districts.
Right, I understand that, sir. However, getting to Commissioner Frankel's point, that if you do not get the appeal to reward, and you can change the A's and B's at that point and say, all right, we have micro districts, we're not going to keep the letter designation, we're going to give it a unique number. You can do that at any time in a year, not ending in a 1 or a 0. So
Actually, in my opinion, if all
the appeal, you can renumber.
In my opinion, actually, I think we could do it in any year, because we're not changing any lines. We're just changing the label as to what the district is. Instead of saying it's 8B, it's now District 17, with no change in the.
You might be correct, yeah.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter. We're not getting to 2029 before we do this.
Kevin, can I ask you one other question? If the board proceeds with this appeal, I'm not holding you to any time frame, just asking. We would have to make things for our benefit, for our staff, has to be complete by April 15th. Would that be correct?
So in other words, if the appeal goes through and you can reward now,
Right.
is that your question?
Yes. If we did an appeal, there's no way the appeal is going to be heard by, we have a drop dead date in order to have this thing complete, correct, as far as addresses and things like that out to the voters and where they're voting. Is that an April 15th drop dead date?
I would confirm that with the division. I'm not exactly sure of that date. I know I've been living with the March 24th date. That's kind of been the one in my, view.
Okay.
But if you're asking me, let's say, they say, yeah, on Friday this week, your appeal's approved. You can go ahead and reward. We would have to check your population totals, make sure that it's compliant under population, and then proceed proceed with that. So I would say we could probably do it within the 2 weeks ahead of the 15th. I would say we would need like at least 2 weeks,
Okay.
at least a week, 2 weeks.
Commissioner Jallo would like to have some, make a
Based on
comment.
the decision that the AG's office would give. And when?
Just,
Commissioner Jallo.
just to be organized, which entity should be making this appeal? Should we do it? Should it be
Board of
Board of Elections, or should it be the rewarding commission?
Rewarding commission. We should add, if we're requesting a modification of the ward lines.
Right.
Then it would be the rewarding commission, which would include the Old Bridge clerk,
Right.
to
So
request that.
shouldn't this conversation convene with those people
Well,
present?
but we should just, I'm not saying we should
I'm
decide
just
to
saying
do
before
it.
we
should find out
can't really
whether.
take any action
No, no,
or even make
but we
that
should,
motion
but
at
we
this time.
should find out whether the AG, since they have the expertise in this, whether they think it can be done. I mean, the
I've got no
engineer-
problem with that.
The
I
engineer
just-
says it, no, we
As
don't.
far as, I just don't want to belabor the point any further.
No, we
If-
don't
if
have- we
should
can't
have
do it now.
other-
We don't-
If the proper entity who should be making this call for an appeal is not necessarily us.
It's not the time, we don't need to do the appeal now. This relates to ward lines.
I understand,
That's not
I just
effective
also
for
mean the
you.
discussion should include other parties as well.
Yeah,
So I just,
yeah.
you know, so this conversation needs to happen again with other persons present.
Yeah, well, we will need to know how that would affect their polling locations, et cetera, but it's just that,
And Tom, is this something that you could ask the Attorney General if it conceivably could occur, what the parameters around that would be?
Sure.
So I just think that's the direction.
well, let me ask that this part is within our wheelhouse. I don't think there's any way that's gonna be, even if the Attorney General says, yes, we can do it, I don't think there's any way that we could get a court order and do this
Oh, no.
this year at all. Never gonna happen. So the question that we have to decide is, with these micro districts, do we want to go with, I won't say option A and B, we'll say option one, which is doing the A and B, so the people going to the same polling location, and that when they get their ballot card, some of them will be voting for one congressional candidate, and some will be voting for another, I mean, one congressional district's candidates, and the others, and that would be the A and B. Or do we want to not have that ever, and for this election, set up an extra, essentially 3 more election districts in these things, 1 for each of the micro wards, or 2, assuming nobody else registers before the June deadline. In this other one, it had nothing, and staff it for this election with an extra voting machine, 2 extra poll books, and 4 poll clerks for the numbers. I think that's really the question, right?
That's I think under our purview.
Yes,
That's not
I know it is our purview. The question is, what do we want to do?
I defer to you guys. You have been around here longer, but I
Yeah.
don't necessarily see the issue with the A and B. I understand and hear
Yeah.
you saying that you don't like it
Yeah.
and that it's not ideal
Right.
going
Yeah.
forward. It's a simple,
Yeah.
you're A,
Yeah.
you're B.
And
here's why.
yeah, no.
Because we're gonna have to find
No,
separate
but
issues
you send out
anyway,
the
right?
information.
My view is for
Exactly.
this year, if we have to do this,
Right.
that we do the A and B option, because thankfully, our machines now,
Can do that.
with the e-poll books, we can print that, the card that person gets, we're not gonna say, oh, which district are you in? We're not gonna have to rely on the poll clerks to decide whether they're in congressional district 6 or 12. When they're in there and they sign in, the SVRS already has whether it's 6 or 12. So the card that they get, that gets put in the machine, will show them the ballot face for either congressional district 6 or 12, depending upon where they are.
And whoever does the inputting, you have to check, I guess, and double check, right, to make sure.
Could we commit to extra education of the voter in that area for that purpose?
You could, I mean, again, like if you're a voter in 6 or 12 and you go to the poll booth and it pulls you up, you are getting a ballot card that's programmed
Right.
for that
Right,
ballot
if they know that
style.
they're in 6 or
But books
12.
have-
You put it in, and the only ballot that's gonna come up is let's say for the primary is,
Right.
if you're in that congressional six,
The-
you're only gonna get that
the
congressional
only-
six ballot.
The information has to be put in properly.
Yeah, the only physical difference in the polling location with the A and B, based on us machines, so they would come up that way, would be putting up 2 sample ballots, paper ballots on the wall, one for Congressional District 6 and one for Congressional District 12. And presumably, the sample ballots that the voter will get, even if they're in A or B part of it, will be a sample ballot that shows the proper congressional candidates or congressional district.
Commissioner Moskowitz, something.
So it was those numbers that you read off, the 15 and the 60, that we would have to change into an A and a B rather than the old district, correct? In the book?
Yeah,
Okay.
of course.
So, and that's logical.
Yeah, can I say something? I think it's wise keeping it to A and B. You wouldn't want to make it a different district, get polling things there. That's even more confusing to a voter right now, to have them go to a totally different machines and everything, I think. I think
Dan,
this
here's
is the best.
shaking his head, Matt. Here's why. It's an unusual circumstance. You can tell the voter, listen, there was a whole thing that came up. We had to make it A and B because we couldn't mix the whole thing through, not us, but whomever's in Overage, right? It just, Dan, I know you hate the A and B. I just think for this go
I
around,
understand.
it's logical.
I hear
The
both sides.
children learn better. Difference is if they understand it's an unusual situation.
And
Just
hope,
thinking future.
and hopefully,
That's
it
why
would
you're an
just
A.
be, hopefully, it would just be for this 2022 for congressional districts. Because if we agree, and if we look at at the voters at the polling locations, if we make the board lines, for instance, with congressional lines, or the polling locations that they will then vote in are still either the same or just as convenient, and the court orders it, that'll be the end of the period.
Commissioner Moskowitz.
So after, I try to get this, later, then we'll determine whether we have another motion with the, as a rewarding commission, so we include the municipal clerk and talk about that, whether we request the AG to try to get an order to take care of this.
I'm fine with
that
that,
would be
I don't think
later.
that's a motion, I think we just do
No,
it later as a
no,
function.
no, we don't, that's not part of
We
it.
don't need to make a
That
motion.
part was not a motion, that part was not the motion, that was just an explanation of what we would probably be doing
Okay.
later. The
So
only
with the
motion
motion
now
now-
the only motion now is, we're gonna end up adopting this. We have to deal with people in individual election districts that are in 2 congressional districts. We can either do it with the A and B option, same set of poll clerks, same machines, et cetera, they have the card, or we can create for at least for this election, 3 new election districts in which we are
But
staffing.
if we make a motion to adopt this as is,
It's
then we
A and B.
don't have to.
We still have to, because we have to do
Make a
it.
motion not to do something already we've
Correct.
chosen to do
No,
something.
we've chosen, I mean,
If we make
I
a
don't care
motion
about
to
the
adopt
number,
that
I
as
don't
is
care
when the
about the
time
numbers.
comes, if we make a motion to adopt that as is when the time comes, do we then have to make a motion to not adopt a counter version of it? That's what it sounds to me like you're saying.
Commissioner
I mean,
Moskowitz would like to say
Here's a
something.
motion. We accept the map as presented. With full understanding, discussion will continue throughout the election.
Yeah, except we have to determine for.
We
for
accept
this-
the map.
Yeah, but we have to determine for this primary election, for June and for November,
Yeah, we're
whether
accepting
we're
the
going,
map.
We're doing A and B.
So
we're
why
doing
don't-
A and B.
Right.
Okay.
We accept the map as presented with discussion continuing.
Okay,
Or some
well, then
wording like
fine,
that.
if we want to do that,
And I have
yes.
no problem continuing the discussion.
Okay,
Just
so
saying
we-
we accept the map.
If we accept the map, then in that instance, if we accept the map that way, that means we would have A and B for
Correct.
this election, these 2 elections, which is fine with me, but Dan would
Oh,
probably.
you got, that's why we have 6 commissioners.
I know,
so-
that's why, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to be, I'm trying to,
Right.
this is not simple.
I know, I get it. I'd like to hear from the,
Staff?
well, I'd like to hear from the staff, but I'm not ready to make a motion today.
Well,
I think this was a good education for us,
Yeah.
but I'm not ready, I don't know if we can make a motion today.
So we let Obridge look at it?
I think we just need to just,
no, I'm not saying to adopt them out today,
okay.
but we have to,
Yeah, you did, I know.
I did.
okay, well, we could, but.
But I mean, all right, it's greater discussion,
don't
I
think
have
there's-
no
I don't
problem
think-
accepting
right.
the map. We all understand we still have under discussion.
Right.
So let's do it that way, that's all.
Yeah, well,
But Dan is not
if
happy.
you want,
We can
we
table
want to let Oldbridge look at
Table.
this stuff, I don't think they're
Oh,
gonna be able to
I- I-
collaborate.
I agree with you on
Right,
that.
so fine.
I agree.
Even if I wanted to
I'm
accept
just
the map.
saying
we
amongst,
reconvene.
amongst us,
Right.
because this is gonna be, either a Zoom or
Right.
an email or otherwise.
Yeah.
The question is, are we happy for this cycle, if we adopt this map,
Right.
that we use an A and B for this cycle for the congressional
I'm
district,
okay with it.
right?
And if you take a straw poll for that, without
I'm
making a
okay.
motion, you'll know what people are voting, because the way they vote now,
I'm
Because I don't
fully
want-
made my decision. I don't,
Okay, you understand what,
I think I do. I think I fully understand it, but I don't think it's right.
I don't want to talk ad nauseam, but I'm happy to talk to you afterwards or any
Sure.
other way on that
Sure.
part. That's just,
I also want to fully understand the other argument. Like, I don't fully.
Well-
About changing the wards?
Yeah, no, not
We're-
changing the wards, but adding additional numbers.
districts. It means what we're creating, we would have to, the other alternative would be, we would end up creating 2, perhaps 3 more districts.
Right, I understand that,
Which
but I
has-
just don't understand why, like 23, 28, 29, is it just clearer or?
No, we would have to, because it would be a different number, it would be a whole set of.
to me, it's clear, to me,
Uh-huh.
to the voter, to me at
Right,
least, it's
right.
clearer
Okay.
to the voter. That's
But that
why I
would-
was saying by numerical, sequential.
Just keep going.
That would mean that we would.
That's to me, that may not be,
No, I think what I
For
said,
each of
I don't
those-
see a difference, either one
Well,
is.
no, but for each of those numbers, each distinct number means another machine,
Right.
2 more e-poll books, 4 more poll clerks for 16 people,
I see,
55.
That's what we have to do.
Right, so that's the option, that's the other option.
got it.
So,
I'm not worried as much as about the cost and expense
Sure.
to make sure the voter has the right information and materials to vote.
Yes.
That's, I mean, yes, they are micro districts, no question. They are
Right,
substandard in what we look at as a minimum of 500 or 250, so, but we didn't create, we
Right.
did not create this.
sure.
So we're stuck with what we have to
well,
have a
we're gonna,
solution. If your way, I understand.
constitute rewarding commission to request this.
I understand.
We can, hopefully, the court will agree and we can get rid of those
I
before
agree.
we have.
I understand your point.
Consulting with the clerk.
Got it.
With the.
Could I just hear from the staff just quickly, just to see what any input they may have?
My only input is, I'm not understanding how you can put a 10A in the system. I don't know how that would work in SVRS. Mr. Lynch said they did do it in other counties. I don't know that.
But I would say probably from a staff perspective, for inputting, programming, and machines, the cleanest version would be numerical.
Yes, the 10A and 10B is not.
Going 10, 11.
If we have,
That's important enough.
what if we didn't even say 10A and B? The issue is dividing it. I don't remember the exact wording of this option because it's not a great thing. If we just have district such and such, and the SVRS is already programmed that they're in district such and such, but some of them vote for in Congressional District 6 and Congressional District 12,
Same district, different congressional?
yes, that would be.
I agree. That's confusing. So that's confusing.
It's confusing.
I'd
Really
rather,
to us, it's work in the system.
I'd rather figure out a way to get the A and B.
Not to have A and B. Have completely different numbers.
But a completely different number means we've just created 2, perhaps 3 new election districts,
Right.
which we have to put all the various equipment and the staff in for 16 people. We have 4 poll clerks for 16 people, and then a voting machine and 2 e-poll books, and another one for 55 people. And God forbid, in this other place that has 0 voters, that registered voters now, one person registers to vote, then we have to set up another district where we have 4 poll clerks, another machine, and 2 e-poll books for that one person.
Okay, I think we've got this at nauseam.
Okay, I know, well, we just have to decide.
No, I know, so we can think about, it's Tuesday, we have time to digest it ourselves too, so.
But she's saying it
Do we have
can't be
another
done.
map, or is it done?
It's
Piscataway.
But they have an appliance if you want to save there, if you want Kevin to go over, but Piscataway, the districts at
We
this
should
point.
at least take a look, I guess. I don't know.
It's,
There's a question.
Well, there was no feedback that came back from Piscataway.
Not yet, I don't believe.
So I don't know whether,
What was the date we had to do this done by?
Thursday.
Thursday.
You don't have any agenda. You don't have it scheduled.
I didn't even look. I didn't even look at my schedule. Because we weren't talking about it.
Kevin, have you with them?
Kevin, no, I mean, they just,
Yeah.
Are they off the phone already, or?
Kevin, are you still on?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, I'm sorry, if you just want to briefly jump into Piscataway, show the map and just a brief description. Again, we're not ready to vote on that one, but I just wanted to do.
Microphone teams.
Yeah.
So it'll be a
Yes.
motion, whatever.
So,
Yes, yeah, that's why.
with the rewarding process, Piscataway was very similar to Monroe, where any word that had, so for example, if Ward 1 already had a District 1, we left it as such, but if it got an additional District 1 from another ward due to the rewarding, we just added,
Yeah.
the next number to sequentially was given to that district, so.
The renumbering is not an issue. I mean, it's in a different ward, it says, if we move the district from one ward to another ward, it just gets the next district.
Correct.
The question is,
So to minimize the impact, right.
yeah, the question is there, and I don't think you can answer that because you just did it based on population, et cetera, and compactness. So it's just, I guess we really need the Piscataway people to tell us whether there's any of the other issues. So I don't think there's anything.
No, I don't think there's anything.
Okay. Okay. Yes. The only thing I think that we should do here is we should know, we should try to clarify amongst ourselves what we want to do with Old Bridge on Thursday.
Well, do we need Kevin anymore? Do we need Kevin anymore in this staff?
We're not gonna, I don't think there's anything else we can do.
Okay.
Is this the last map?
So
Yeah.
why don't we vote on this map then, and then go
It
back
was
to
pretty straightforward, what was it, Monroe? Yeah, it was more like Monroe where you don't have it's only congressional, one congressional, is Piscataway is. So Piscataway is only one congressional district, you don't have to split.
No, we don't have micro districts here.
And with regard to the adopted boards, like, I believe we took whole districts, or pretty close to whole districts, and we preserved the original numbers and just gave it the next sequential number, highest number. So again, we want to leave voters, if they're used to being in Ward 1, District 1, we're leaving them there, we're not changing the whole thing.
But there
We're
are
already
individual,
impacting one district, we're just going to renumber that one, and that was all that was needed to be done.
but Kevin, there are, in Piscataway, there are districts that were, the configuration of the lines, the district lines were changed, and not just what ward they were in.
Right, based
Right.
on the and in fact, I'll let Nick you speak to it. Yeah, and anywhere that the district was split by a ward line, it got absorbed into the neighboring district. If it was able to, under the 2 criteria where we keep it under 1,500 registered voters, so if you had a 50% turnout, you'd be around 750, which I believe typically we're somewhere between 35 to 45% on average turnout. And again, not exceeding that, keeping around that 750 voter turnout for the last 2 general elections, which those are the criteria or check boxes we look at under Title 19 requirements
that were met. So if districts were split and they were able to be absorbed into that district, that neighboring district, that was done, and we kept that numbered district wherever possible, or if we're adding a district by virtue of that action, then it was given the next higher number within that ward.
Are we okay with this one?
Yeah.
Well, what's gonna happen is we're not adopting this either until
Yeah.
Piscataway
They see
comes
it,
back
right.
with us.
Right.
So really, the concept is Piscataway, well, Old Bridge, they apparently don't have issues, on-the-ground issues, but they're looking at the other stuff, and if they're looking at the other stuff, the other stuff being where the people would vote if we did something different with the micro districts. I don't think they're gonna be able to do anything, but on Thursday, we'll have to adopt something. And Piscataway didn't even tell us that's whether or not there's any on-the-ground problems.
Just that they're still looking at the lines provided.
Okay, so we hopefully by Thursday, Piscataway is gonna say there's no on-the-ground issues with the districts, which means we just adopt, hopefully, which means we just adopt those. And in Old Bridge, I think, as I said, I think we should just think about what we want to do, because remember, we're going to have a Zoom meeting. We're not going to have the maps in front of us or anything that we can actually look at. So we have to just, our two options will be, well, I don't want to talk about that. Well, yes, the two options in terms of would be either adopting this map, which is the A and B option in one of the districts, or adopting the map with a modification and all the micro districts between new standalone districts for this election. Those are those will be our two options.
I have just one question, just to clarify. Linda, you said that it would be difficult to do A and B because of reasoning. Tell me.
SVRS.
Yeah, were you talking about people in the same district voting for different candidates? One A candidate, B candidate?
Would the machine company, whatever?
I don't know how they would program it.
Well, that's, I think you have to find out.
It's not really the trying to pull over the machine, it's how
No,
it's programmed,
in the
so it has to
system.
come from SVRS.
Yeah.
Yes, and my understanding is SVRS is programmed as to whether the people are in the 6th congressional district or the 12th. So when they go in and sign in and they get a voting card,
Right.
their voting card is programmed, so on the machine, the ballot face that comes up is either the 6th congressional district ballot face or the 12th, automatically.
By district, by voting district. Correct?
Well, I don't know.
Because the congressional districts are split by voting district, right? 6th congressional has these voting districts, 12 has these. So how do I take 10 and put it into 2?
Well, the SVRS, I don't know if it even means for our purposes whether we have to say A and B or whatever, so I mean, we could, but
I think you need a clean break, put a number, not the A and B, that's my.
that means
That's,
More districts.
that means 3 more districts, 2, potentially 3 more districts with the full staff and the full equipment for 16 voters, 55, is this population?
Voters.
16 voters.
Which is why they made it.
55 voters, and if somebody registers in that other district, potentially 1 voter. With 4 poll clerks sitting there all day and all the equipment.
I just think it's so confusing to the voter to, all of a sudden now you got 16 voters in that one little town, in one little area, that now, gee, I'm in District 11. I mean, that's just confusing. I mean, just for those 16, just leave, if it's possible, mechanically, whatever, whatever.
Well, Tom
Well,
said
the
they
card-
can do an A and B.
Yeah, the card, the voting card, I mean, the SVRS
Can do it.
and the system, with our e-poll books, when people come in and register, the card that will be printed out, the voting card that will be printed out for them to use, will be programmed to show either the 6th congressional district ballot face or the 12th congressional district ballot face, regardless of whether we say 8A, 8B, or what have you.
based on what SVRS is telling you, how
Right.
they're setting it up in SVRS.
Right.
And SVRS, is each voter in SVRS, is on the SVRS, does it say 6th Congressional District or 12th?
Yes.
Then the card, when they go into that polling place, when they sign in, the card that they get will automatically give them either the 6th Congressional District back, assuming SVRS is right, which we have to assume, even though we.
No, we
not
have to
be.
check it to make
I
sure.
know, I understand that, I understand that, but the theory is, and that's the same even if we create extra districts, because they have to see that, they have to say that.
I think, and again, not to cut our,
I'm happy,
the
I don't-
conversation you're cut, but I think that's really Linda kind of reaching out to Knowing, which runs SVRS, and asking, if we did A and B, how would that look in SVRS? Because again, we don't have that.
Yes, that's fine,
And
that's good, that's
reporting
great,
back to the
perfect,
commissioners about how.
perfect, I guess.
Oh, sorry.
Chairman, thank you all for that. I think I have a lot to think about. I'll certainly be thinking about it between now and time to make a
Thursday.
vote next Thursday. I'll be considering all the comments that were made today, certainly for my vote, conscientiously. This time I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
You'd like to what?
Make a motion to
Wait,
adjourn.
we have a public comment.
I apologize. I apologize.
If we're, well, I'm
There were so
sorry.
many comments going on, I forgot about it.
No hard feelings.
Okay.
I'm recognized.
Missed it with that arm.
Okay.
I never missed an orange. I'm in Syracuse.
Nice,
You know?
nice.
On redistricting.
Good evening. I have a number of comments to make. I feel that discussions.
This meeting is on redistricting.
Okay.
Okay.
Is the public comment you're saying is restricted to redistricting?
Right.
Based on what?
Because that's what the meeting was about.
But historically, has the board not entertained comments and questions related to the board's business? General public comments?
No?
No, you haven't done that. Okay, I beg to differ. I think you can check out my videos on New Brunswick Today.com. You see a lot of.
Well, you make comments, we don't.
I understand, but it's my time to make comments. So I do have some concerns. I think that many of the discussions happening today should have happened in December. We saw this coming,
It's,
and they're still not including the right people in the discussion. We're still talking about, well, what might the AG say? What might ES&S say? How might the SVRS handle these options? And we're coming up now against apparently a new deadline at the last minute. And Remington Vernick, not here. County Clerk, not here. ES&S, not here. They failed to show. RVE can call in, but we're not paying them enough to send someone here. And apparently for this redistricting, there's no public process. This is the public process, is my 5 minutes that you're giving me. And it seems that everything else is being done behind closed doors. I will point out that the board members should have received, and please tell me if you didn't get my email, February 26th, I sent an urgent message regarding errors in the Old Bridge map. Why now are we having an emergency meeting on this very same topic nearly a month later? If it's an emergency, why didn't the board have the emergency meeting sooner? Madam Chair, can you tell me why there's an emergency meeting today at this time?
are you finished with the comments?
I have plenty more.
Because I have, with the permission of the chair, I'll respond to part of that. None of this.
Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Okay, Bernard, okay.
That's
I don't
okay.
mean to interrupt you because he
Okay.
has 5 minutes.
Got it.
So let him go his 5
Okay.
minutes.
Excuse me, who's the chair of the meeting?
We'll answer it after you're
I'm
finished.
sorry, Chair, if I may.
Okay, I appreciate the concern for my 5 minutes, but I appreciate dialogue with my leaders. And I heard allusions that decisions are going to be made over email, potentially. I think that that's very wrong. I think that if you are going to be voting on a final redistricted map, you should have a public meeting, let the public come. It can be on Zoom if necessary or Microsoft Teams, but it would be wrong for you to make these decisions on email. I'd like to know why today you're only addressing the South Amboy, Woodbridge, and Monroe maps and not the other 20-plus towns in the county. Are you going to keep these maps a secret like the last ones, where I had to fight for a month or more just to get copies of them after they've been finalized?
how long is the public gonna have to wait to find out what district they're in now? Is this gonna be the type of thing where you say, oh, it'll be ready tomorrow, Charlie, and then they say, well, Remingtonburg needs to cook something up and it's gonna take weeks and, you know, we're gonna end up fighting over it again? I don't want that. The map should be released as soon as they're approved. They should be approved in a public setting, in a public meeting. As you know, this will cause disruption to the county committee contests. Already been decimated because both political parties chose to use the pandemic as an excuse to cancel those elections and shamefully keep themselves in power. Of course, disruption to the wards is even more problematic because it affects government elections. It's March 22nd, more than 2 months after you finalize your decisions on the ward maps. Can anyone tell me how many people were moved to a different ward in Piscataway? I've been trying to get the answer to that question for a long time because I know the board talked about having, limiting the disruption being a priority. In fact, the only priority that was stated on the record during the meetings. But I think you picked the map that had the most disruption, and I'd like to quantify that. I'd like to know just how many people are in a different ward because of the decision made in January. I'd also like to know how many maps were submitted by Commissioner Frankel. We know he submitted the Piscataway map that was chosen, but I believe he may have also submitted some more in places like Monroe and potentially other communities, but he didn't answer when I asked at the last meeting how many other maps he submitted. I'd also like to know, did any other commissioners make their own maps, or was Commissioner Frankel the only one to do so?
Minutes, so.
Okay, I do get a second bite at the apple, right?
John, did you want to answer?
I'll skip it. Charlie, if you want to talk about part of this, I'll talk to you after.
I appreciate that.
I believe Commissioner Jallo started to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll renew my motion.
Madam Chair, I believe I get another 3 minutes, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
Okay, so before I begin my additional 3 minutes, will any of my questions be answered, or is the board declining to answer on the record all of the questions I just asked?
I don't see where we have any answers at this point.
Okay. Well, I continue to have questions. I'm going to keep coming. I'm concerned about emails that I've seen where, with the Piscataway rewarding situation, the rewarding commissioners, including all of you, were asked to weigh in on email before the public meeting. I believe that was a violation of the Open Public Meetings Act. I believe Ms. Cedar, weighed in. Mr. Frankel, after careful consideration, weighed in. And Ms. Moskowitz also weighed in. And this was at the suggestion of Mr. Lynch. So it was a bad suggestion because it was suggesting that you violate the OPMA, and it seems that 3 members of the Piscataway Rewarding Commission did. I was also concerned to see that there was a script in place for the December 16th meeting. Can you tell me, do you often use a script for public meetings?
What?
A script.
Script?
Yeah, you remember the first rewarding meeting, you had a script you were following, correct?
I don't remember it. January or?
December, the December one, the formation meeting. Well, I have a copy of it, and you stuck to it remarkably, but I'm concerned about the lack of public process surrounding these decisions that are going to affect our elections for years to come. Obviously, rewarding is important. Today is a day that we should all be acknowledging that, because it's the day that we have to do a do-over election, because the last rewarding wasn't completely done just right, and it caused ballots to be sent to the wrong people for the wrong elections, and a contest had to be overturned, voided, the results of the contest, because the rewarding was done sloppily or got lost along the way. The state screwed up, the county screwed up, somebody screwed up. It's still a blame game right now, but at the end of the day, something went wrong, and I'm here to try to make sure that we avoid these types of disasters from happening again. It unfortunately looks like we're going in the wrong direction after the last election, and certainly after all the chaos surrounding rewarding, to find ourselves in a situation where we're now 2 days away from a deadline, no public process, and quite frankly, nothing decided in this entire meeting, and now you're going to potentially make the final decisions via email? you know, this is not what the public deserves. I ask that you include me. I've asked so many times to just send me a notice when you're having a meeting. That was not done today. This is an emergency meeting added to your schedule. By the way, it's supposed to start at 5 p.m. according to the agenda, but it started much earlier. I'm glad I got here early. I'm glad I was able to attend, and I appreciate Ms. Maria Tanning for taking my call and informing me about the meeting. But I will continue to ask to be proactively informed of your meetings so that I don't miss them. I think that's not too much to ask, and you have the power to direct your secretary to keep me in the loop and send me the notices of your meetings. I hope you'll do that.
Okay, we will. Commissioner Jello,
You're up again.
Made it. Motion to adjourn.
second,
Second.
roll call.
Chairman Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner Franklin?
Yes.
Commissioner Cast?
Yes.
Commissioner Montalvo?
Yes.
Commissioner Jello?
Yes.
Commissioner Benjamin?